Hi everyone, this is Andy Hira from Simon Fraser University's Clean Energy Research Group and the Research Institute for Humanity and Nature in Kyoto, Japan. I want to spend a few minutes telling you today about the global challenge of plastic waste, why it's such a vexing and complex issue, and why solutions are available to us, but it's difficult for us to reach them. Everyone should be aware of the problem of plastic waste because it will affect the quality of our life and the environment for future generations. In fact, we're at a crossroads in terms of humanity right now. We have a great love of nature, as you can see from this beautiful photo of Mount Fuji, where I am in Japan right now. But we also love our capitalistic and consumeristic systems. It's funny because even when we go out for nightlife, we are drinking beverages that are made ultimately from water. We're breathing the air. We're eating food that is given to us by nature. So somehow, over the last century, we have managed to divorce ourselves from the fact that we still rely on natural systems for our sustenance. Even in the middle of the city, you can find nature everywhere, as you can see by this photo of Osaka and the river. It's time for us to stop treating nature as garbage bin and start thinking about how we can live together harmoniously with nature so that it'll be available for future generations. So let's talk about plastics. Plastics are a magical material. In fact, the plastics are available everywhere you look, whether you're on a flight or on a train or in a car. When you're looking at the dashboard, you see plastics. Plastics are in almost every consumer item, including the synthetic materials that have become so popular for textiles like our dry fit clothing. So plastics are really a big part of our life and have improved the quality of our life dramatically over the 20th century. It's really hard to think about how we would have the same ability to manage without plastics. So it's not necessarily about getting rid of plastics, but it's about managing them and the waste that comes from them, because plastics last forever. Even when we dispose of them, they break into micro and nano particles and they enter into our environment. So we really need to think about managing our plastic waste properly. In fact, plastics are a series of different types of materials. For example, the chip bags you see on the upper left here, that's polypropylene. You'll also find that on the caps of the bottles that you'll use for water bottles, for example. Polypropylene can be used for hard furniture. One of the most vexing sources of plastic is what we call LDPE. That is seen in the upper right here in terms of garbage bags, grocery bags, disposable grocery bags, or food wrappings. Then we have HDPE. You'll find that in your detergent bottles and your shampoo bottles. We have PVC, which is used in piping and in medical wrapping. We also have polystyrene, which is used as insulation or for packing, for electronic equipment. A lot of times you'll find it. The most common plastic that we think about is the PET plastic that's in your plastic bottles. PET plastic tends to be fairly easy to recycle, not the case with these other types of plastic. So we have many different kinds of plastics, including in mattresses. Mattresses are one of the most vexing things to dispose of for sanitary reasons, as well as the reasons of the difficulties of getting rid of plastics. So what we've seen from this review is that plastics are extremely important and useful to us, but they're also a danger to us if we don't manage them better than we have so far. 90% of plastics are coming from fossil fuels, and they are contributing to global warming. Plastic waste is increasing globally. In fact, it is increasing astronomically, as you can see from the figures to the right there from the OECD, and it's continuing to increase over time. Globally, just 14% of plastic is being recycled and 5% is being recovered. So 81% of our plastic is either going into landfill or being incinerated, or it's just left out, as you can see from this picture on the left. And if it's just left out or if it's in landfill, it will eventually break down into those tiny particles. It will be leaked into our soil, into our waterways, into our air. It's affecting all kinds of ocean ecosystems, as you've seen from the ubiquitous photos, not just of the large pieces of plastic, but also the small pieces of plastic that are infecting our seafood. In fact, there's increasing evidence from the Lancet and other health authorities that plastic is linked to all kinds of health effects. It's linked to endocrine disruption, increased potential for cardiovascular, developmental, and reproductive issues, and to cancer. And the evidence is really clear. It's not only mounting on a general level, but it's really clear when you go near petrochemical communities where the plastics are being produced. There are much higher rates of cancer in those communities. And so that really is a warning sign for us that we need to be careful about that. So what about recycling? You know, a lot of the petrochemical and plastics companies want to tell us that recycling is happening. We see all kinds of ads that 100% of bottles are being recycled. But as we've already seen, there are different types of plastic. The PET bottles are being recycled, but their caps are not easily recycled. In fact, one of the biggest challenges is you have mixed plastics in all kinds of products. And so because they're mixed plastics, you have different recycling techniques for different types of plastics. And all of that plastic needs to be cleaned and sorted before it can be properly recycled. And remember, a lot of the plastic will have labels on it. Those labels need to be removed. We need to clean out any discoloration. So the plastic companies would like to continue to increase the amount of plastic that's being consumed, but it's just not sustainable. They offer other solutions besides recycling because recycling is so limited, such as biodegradable plastic. But biodegradable plastic gets mixed in with normal plastic, so it's hard to tell what is what. Even if it's labeled, it is still a mountain of plastic waste. And in fact, not all of biodegradable plastic will automatically degrade. It requires specialized machinery and techniques to actually degrade it. Then they talk about chemical recycling. That is breaking down those polymers into monomers. It's super expensive, technology intensive. So far, it's not a large scale solution for our problem. What about substitutes? It's very hard to find a good substitute for plastic. Plastic is moldable into different shapes, as we know. It's water resistant, which is why it's so great for fabrics such as warm-up outfits. It's lightweight, it's durable, and it's super cheap to produce. It's really hard to find an easy substitute for plastic. In Canada, we've gotten rid of single-use plastic bags in grocery stores, and now most people will either ask for a paper bag or a cloth bag. Remember that those things require additional energy to produce, so a cloth bag tends to be better. So because of all these unique properties of plastic, it's hard to find a one-shot solution. We really have to find solutions for each application. And what about recycling? Well, what we see from this graph is, in fact, a lot of the plastic waste around the world is being mismanaged. While there is a limit to the recycling that's happening in the northern countries, in many of the countries in the global south, as you can see from this graph, it's not being managed at all. And so the plastic is just leaching into our environment, going into our waterways, eventually into our oceans, into our soil and our air, and it's affecting all of our global supply chains as well as our global environments. So the biggest priority would be really to invest in waste management systems in the global south that would reduce the huge amount of plastic waste that's being leaked into the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean every year. That would be a good starting point. In fact, we had a series of negotiations around the Global Plastics Treaty, and they collapsed in 2025 because petrochemical producers and petrostates were so resistant to having any kind of meaningful treaty. The talks are resuming, but what's essential is that those talks included financing for countries in the global south to better handle their plastic waste. That is really an urgent task and priority. As you can see from these photos in the global south, one in Sri Lanka, one in Ghana, a beach there, we just have plastic debris that is just washing up on the shores. and piling up into landfills. And eventually that's coming back to us in the form of ecosystem disasters. It's going to be just as bad, if not worse than climate change, because we don't have any ready solutions for it. Whereas with climate change, we have renewable energy and we have batteries that will solve those problems. What we know is that the most vexing problem is plastic waste packaging. 40% of our global plastic waste is going into packaging. If we could just reduce the amount of plastic packaging we have, we would vastly reduce the problem. Textiles are another problem. You probably have seen the photos of the textiles washing on shore in Western Africa. We try to sell some of our secondhand clothing, but what's happening is many of the clothing manufacturers now are producing clothing that is basically disposable. And so that clothing is not being properly recycled and it's ending up in our global environment. Only 9% of the total global plastic waste is being recycled. 50% is going to landfill and 19% being burned. Much of it is being mismanaged in terms of being burned or being dumped into waterways. So the result is that we have millions of tons of plastic debris that's going into our oceans. That's why it's washing on our shores and reminding us, the ocean is reminding of us of the problems that we're creating for ourselves. So we have solutions. We have a roadmap that we can follow through the waste hierarchy. That would include product and process redesign to minimize the use of plastic. We would really want to charge the true cost of plastic. Right now, virgin plastic is so much cheaper than recycled plastic, you can't get recycled markets off the ground, except in a few, small cases like, extracting gold out of electronics. There aren't really vibrant secondary markets for recycled plastic. We should really charge the true cost of the price of plastic when we sell it. We need to keep working on finding sustainable substitutes beyond cloth bags. For every type of industry, we would want to find more durable containers. In fact, what we know is you can reuse your PET bottles. You can just put water in them multiple times, probably 100 or more times before the plastic will degrade, whereas you can only recycle it three to five times. So it's the same with any kind of plastic. What we know now is that you can go to a store. There are pop-up stores that are happening. Take your old detergent bottle, take your old soap bottle, and refill them. And that way, we don't have to produce all that extra plastic. We have to really urgently build recycling capacity in the global south. And we have to think about that mountain of plastic waste that we have accumulated over the last century and think about ways that we can use it beyond just burning it. In Japan, they burn it mostly to create energy, but there may be other uses. For example, you can upcycle plastic into floor tiles, into roof tiles, as Cambridge University is trying to do. You can downcycle it into tires or potentially into road materials. Those things need to be tested out and need to be tried out so that we can use that waste plastic and not waste all of that material and not produce more material unnecessarily when we have some that is perfectly good for use. That's the advantage of the durability of plastic. We should make it work for us rather than just disposing of it. The fact is that most consumers aren't aware of what's happening with their plastic. They see these confusing numbers and arrows. They don't know what they mean. So what we really need to do is make sure that there's transparency around the products, and that will also allow, by making plastics one particular type of plastic, products one particular type of plastic, you can then recycle it more easily, and you can trace how many times that plastic's been recycled. And last but not least, we need to have transparent targets, and we need to have an independent authority to point out how much plastic waste is being recycled, in what types of product categories, and that will allow us finally to hold governments and companies accountable for the claims they're making around recycling. So we're really very far from a circular economy. We overuse packaging. And at Simon Fraser University, we have had some experiments around fair trade and the circular economy that are very easy first steps that anyone can take. The first thing is to get rid of all single-use plastics. So people bring their own reusable cups, or you can reuse your PET bottles, and we have water refilling stations around campus. We sort all of our waste, as you can see in the bins behind that photo. We have organic waste separate and yard waste separate in Vancouver, and all of that can create methane and fertilizer that can be reused. We can refill containers. We can take our coffee mugs to coffee shops. We don't have to create all of that waste. Even plastic straws can be created from organic, truly biodegradable materials, or they can be created from paper. So there are so many potential options that we can take as first steps, and making those choices as consumers will signal to companies that we are really serious about preserving our environment for our kids. So that's all I have to say for now, and I would love to continue the conversation with you. Please feel free to contact me at ahira@sfu.ca, and let's see what we can do to save the planet. Take care, and we'll see you again next time. For your attention, and look forward to engaging with you in the future.